Don't kill me, please.
Shut the hell up, bitch.
Hello everyone, my name is Mecha, and yes, you read the title right. For this video, I attempted to complete Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade on its hardest difficulty without attacking. Though I should clarify, when I say without attacking, I mean literally not using the attack command. You can still damage enemies and even brutally murder them, as long as it's done in self-defense. So basically, I'm going to rely entirely on countering during enemy phase. Can you beat FE7 without using the attack command just didn't seem as catchy of a title. Most Fire Emblem games can be separated into two categories, player phase focused and enemy phase focused. In the former, most of your units are incapable of surviving more than a few hits from the enemy, so you need to take full advantage of your turn to eliminate as many threats as possible. In the latter, your units are generally stronger than the enemies by such a significant margin that they become one-man armies. There's usually plenty of enemies to go around, but they're so weak they might as well have come straight out of a warrior's game. Generally, your goal is to find the positions that allow you to take out as many enemies as possible and live. Blazing Blade is one of those games, so it should be perfect for a challenge that prohibits us from attacking on player phase. So, let's skip Lynn's story, head straight into Hector hard mode and see what happens. But first, a disclaimer. Most of what you're about to see is the work of my editor, Hoshi the Hero. This playthrough was recorded by him over a year ago, and he's also the one editing this video. To make things simple though, I'll be talking in first person, but just know that when I say I mean Hoshi. So subscribe to him if you're into Minecraft Let's Plays. And while we're on the screen, you will notice that the birth month changes the affinity. The effects of this are negligible, it's basically a few points of hit and avoid for units that share the same affinity, but any strategy where 3 points of avoid would make a difference is one we would want to avoid anyway. I wanted the strategies used in this challenge to be somewhat replicable. In fact, though this is being played on an emulator, I avoided using save states in order to get an authentic sense of frustration this challenge would bring. I chose Wind in the end for no real reason, but Ice is probably the best as it covers a lot of the best units like Marcus, Raven and Pent. With our tactician made, we're on to the first chapter. Right from the start, there's already a small problem. We only have 2 units, the Lord Hector and the Thief Matthew. Like many early chapters in Fire Emblem hard modes, there isn't much room for error, and the developers definitely didn't think anyone would be crazy enough for them to justify making sure you can beat it without attacking. From the start, the early chapters worried me, and I knew good RNG would be crucial, but with how short the first one is, resetting until things go well is no problem. So I could go to the left, but that would require attacking the wall, and that means I have to use the attack command. However, if we try to go down, there are simply way too many enemies and not enough vulneraries. This is probably a good time to establish some more rules. To be clear, the only actual rule is that I cannot use the attack command on a red enemy unit. Walls don't have feelings, so attacking them is fair game. Now we have our first combat. This guy tries poking Hector with a stick, so Hector responds by peacefully yeeting an axe between his eyes. He has a shakier hit rate against the archer, so if you're trying to do this, you might want to reset until the archer's stats allow him to go down in 2 hits. Now I had Matthew yoink his vulnerary since he'll be able to survive at least 1 arrow. Then I kept him safe with Hector and finished off the archer. Next I opened up the door to the treasure room while using the opportunity to heal up with the vulnerary I stole. This lured the enemies where I wanted them. From there I ran up to the boss and equipped Hector with the wolf beal and then passed the vulnerary around like a doobie. I made sure the boss had less than 30 HP and 15 defense when I started the chapter to ensure that Hector could 2-round him. He will attack before any of the other enemies, and if I kill him, it ends the map. It's also possible to pull off some of the other shenanigans in this chapter, like forcing an archer to block the way, minimizing the damage you take, or creating an XP grinder. This will use up the hand axe though, and as you can imagine, having a 1-2 range weapon is crucial for this challenge. But clearing out the enemies also allows me to get more items, like the boss's vulnerary, which is also really important when the only method of damaging the enemy is to soak up their hits like a sponge. I decided to redo the chapter in order to get that extra experience, worried about what the next chapter had in store for me. Now we have a lot more units, but that doesn't make things much easier. Those units include a weak unit that can only counter from 2 range, and another, but for 1 range, and 2 inaccurate axe bros. However, we also get our first healer, a cavalier, and 2 of the most important units for this run. Oswin, the winning boss, and Marcus the god, coming in hot with the sexiest base stats you can ask for.
Whoa, mama!
the margin for error was still very slim. It would be extremely difficult to keep everyone alive, but I was not ready to give up this early. If possible, I also wanted to add full recruitment to this challenge. The goal is to get Marcus up to the top as fast as possible, as he can one-round basically anything on an early map. Any enemies that make it past him will need to be dealt with by Lloyd and the bros. Matthew and Sarah cannot be exposed to more than one enemy at a time, but at some point I need to heal and Matthew will be in critical danger. But Marcus made it up there to save the day. He took Sarah out of Matthew's hands, allowing Oswin to rescue Matthew. Now, a weighed down Marcus and Oswin will need to make their retreat with Hector, healing whenever necessary. Luckily, enemies at low HP will sometimes forego attacking in favor of healing, and though it can be annoying, sometimes it ends up saving me. Eventually, they will take out all the enemies after them, so all that's left to do is finish off any stragglers and sell the secret book from the village, as well as any other unneeded weapons, in order to buy more vulneraries and hopefully some one-to-range weaponry in a later chapter. Out of the frying pan and into the fire. We still don't have the option to change starting positions, so we've got to make the most of what we've got. My first instinct is to take advantage of the choke points, so the best path for that is to the left. Elwood and Dorcas make a bridge by chopping some wood, while I'll send Marcus down to clear the lower section and visit the village before it gets burned to the ground, where we get our first mine. Now, seasoned veterans should know that this is the most OP item in the game and a must-have, but I will save the explanation for the rest of you if I actually need to use it. While everyone holds up on the island, Marcus lures some of the enemies over, including a recruitable unit, Guy. Making sure Matthew has an open path to safely recruit him is easier said than done, but I manage it before swiftly getting massacred. See, while Oswin makes for a great wall, he cannot kill everything that comes his way like Marcus can. So this becomes a problem when you're dealing with Pegasus Knights and Brigands that will say, screw your choke points, and swiftly beat your squishy units to death. I try another strategy that involves just trying to kill everything at the starting point, but it's a bust. Many tries later, I eventually decide to skip out on the mine, instead sending Marcus to lead the charge on the left after clearing out the lower Pegasus Knights. In retrospect, I wish I'd spent more time trying to figure out a way, but what's done is done. Positioning is really finicky, but eventually something works out, Guy is recruited and victory is finally within reach. The armory here sells much needed one-to-range weapons. I will take your entire stock. All that's left is to kill the boss and seize the throne, and finally the nightmare ends. Because I visited the island village, I get access to a guiding chapter with the reward being early access to a crucial unit. The first turn is very important. There's a lot to do and very little room to do with it. The goal is to keep the green dude Merlinus safe for 8 turns.
You stupid!
Which is really easy when you realize that you can just pick him up and leave. Despite being a fog of war map with limited visibility, the solution is pretty simple. With only a single point to choke, Oswin the Strangler is all you need to get the job done. Enemies will come in from the left and the right, but you can deal with them easily with all the other units you have. As long as you have a solid method for Sarah to heal and get rescue dropped, your boys should be safe. As all that is happening, Marcus can make his way up to the top right to get the gold from the village and eventually block off the forts on the right. Overall, this chapter is a breath of fresh air from Pegasus Knights and Jesus impersonators, after you figure out the first turn. Finally, we have access to battle preparations. Overall, this chapter isn't very complicated. The goal is to rout the enemy, but there's also side objectives. We have to recruit Urk, and we have to rescue the village he's next to, but this is optional since all it has is an iron blade. In the bottom village is Priscilla, and going to the right are some forts containing Pegasus Knight reinforcements. Our solution is to divide and conquer, and wherever a unit starts is pretty much where they will end up. Hector wins by doing absolutely nothing, while Marcus and Oswin head down to the center. Almost everyone else makes their way towards Urk. After splitting up the enemies, they become a bit easier to take out. Marcus does most of the heavy lifting as he makes his way to Priscilla, and the units at the top recruit Urk and do their best to survive. Meanwhile, we can see Merlinus' main utility, being a human sacrifice. It's okay though, because Merlinus plays on casual mode, he always comes back. This strategy helps take the pressure off the rest of our units, and once he's done dying, Hector can handle the stragglers. At some point, rain starts pouring down from the sky, but for once it actually helps us. With less enemies around to swarm us, the rest of the chapter is a breeze. Marcus whips and nays on Eric, with backup from Priscilla, while everyone else wraps up their business. Despite how small this chapter is, there is a lot going on from the very beginning. The boss has a Draco shield in his possession, which we definitely want to get a hold of if possible to raise a unit's defense. However, he is holding a 3-range weapon that we cannot counter, so killing him for that Draco shield is just not possible, which means we need a thief. And since Matthew cannot be in 2 places at once, we cannot get the chests at the bottom. It's just a silver axe and a men's staff, so it's not a terrible loss. The other goal is to survive an onslaught of enemies for 7 turns. Marcus is the only unit that can get the boss to go where we want him to without dying in the process, which he will spend the entire chapter doing. Meanwhile, on the left side, we will want to bait the Nomad into plucking up the wall. And on the bottom, well, that's a bit of a shit show. Employing a new strategy with our 2 healers, we managed to barely stay alive while protecting the throne. Somehow, we managed to pull off the heist of the century and live to tell a tale. So we're on to the next chapter, and... So we have to save these scrubs called Linus' Legion. Easier said than done. Their starting positions are locked, and we're in another situation where the developers expected you to deal with it using all the tools at your disposal instead of whatever it is that I'm doing. So here's the plan. Shop, bait the Pegasus Knights into using their javelins against will 2 range, die, reset, send Marcus down, get trapped, reset, move the squishies all the way to the right and up as this Pegasus Knight thinks about their life decisions, and by now, Marcus can swoop in to save the day. As all of this is going on, Oswin is single-handedly destroying an entire army and Hector is being escorted to the throne. We want to finish this as quickly as possible before the waves of reinforcements ruin our day, so we're LTCing this shit. Though the chapter was complicated, the explanation is pretty simple, so on to the next one. This chapter starts out with a solid choke point, which you would think is a good thing, right? There are several things we need to get done in this chapter, and fast. We need to keep at least one of the green guys alive to access a guide in the chapter, and we need to steal this thief's night crest. So this choke point becomes a bit of a problem when I'm the one getting choked. Fortunately, there is a way that will allow Marcus to slip through enemy lines. Who would win, an entire castle's defenses or one pre-promoted boy? The answer should be obvious. While Marcus speedruns a war, the rest of the army finishes off the enemies at the entrance of the castle, aside from Oswin, who stays on the lookout for reinforcements. Eventually, Marcus shows us a new trick he learned. Restraint. It's a very useful one, as it allows me to spare Raven to recruit him with Priscilla. He might not look like much now, but he has more potential than most of the units here. Some of my units block this thief, and others are sent to the right to rescue a Gree unit, preferably Raven, so we can recruit Lucius at the same time. After Matthew finishes opening the chests for a hero crest and an unlock staff, I made a rescue chain to get him all the way up to the thief. Of course, he needs enough speed to be able to steal. The only thing left to do is slowly torture the boss to death to give Raven some experience, and then we seize the throne. Because we saved one Green unit, we get a mine as well as access to a guide chapter. This was one of the most enjoyable chapters, mostly because of its simplicity. Get Canas, get the Devil Axe, Florina drops off Hector in this somewhat safe spot to bait enemies, and then flies around looting every house in the vicinity for, most notably, a Lance Reaver and a Sleep Staff. Raven leads the charge on the top path to clear the way for Florina, while Marcus and Oswin hold the back line and Myrnus is killed once again. Reminder that even though people die when they are killed, Myrnus is not a people, he is a tent. But every time he survives a chapter, he levels up to eventually promote into a unit with mobility. At this rate, it seems unlikely we'll be seeing that happen in this playthrough. Oswin promotes during the chapter, becoming even harder to penetrate. Florina finishes the chapter by talking to Fargus the pirate, and just like that, we're on to the next one. As usual, Peg Knights are a huge pain in the ass. Thankfully, we have a unit capable of one-rounding them. Marcus and Oswin guard the stairs while everyone else stays safe on top of the foxhole. Marcus barely survives the first turn, but at least Dark Mages have been taken care of, so Oswin can take a more active role. After getting bullied for 2 turns, Marcus lets Raven and Lowen try out the front lines. 2 Pegasus Knights make it past, but using my copyrighted 2 healer method, they cannot land any kills. Hector and Raven rescue them, leaving Myrnus wide open to get bullied. No big deal. Meanwhile, Marcus and Matthew make their way to the boss to steal his guiding ring, as killing him isn't exactly possible. By turn 8, most of the enemies are dead, but reinforcements are on their way. I managed to steal the ring, but now I'm in a bit of a pickle. Bad men are surrounding me from every angle, and Marcus doesn't have any healing. It ends up coming down to a 50% chance, but I managed to survive. Also, I promote Raven, allowing him to use 1-to-range hand axes. I've been holding out on using the Draco Shield for a while, unsure of how long Marcus would continue to carry the team, but I decide he's still the best unit on the team and use it to make him even better, because hoarding is a pitfall. So you know how earlier I said that the early game would be the hardest? Well, that's what I thought when I was still in the early game, but I changed my mind. You start out on a big landmass with enemies coming from every direction, including behind. The enemy! Meanwhile, you can't even see what's coming up, and many of them have 2 or even 3 range. It would seem that the best strategy is to just huddle up in a corner and cry until Daddy Marcus kills all the scary people, but even he can't take too much of a beating here. And that's even after the Draco Shield. There are simply too many enemies and not enough choke points. In actuality, our one-man armies, Marcus, Oswin, Raven, and Hector, cannot survive for long without healers. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. They protect the healers and they get healed. But they cannot protect them in a situation like this. There's just no way to wipe out the enemies faster than they spawn in without attacking. Eventually, Fiora comes in as a green unit. It's at this point that a light bulb goes off in my head. I might not be able to attack, but nothing is stopping her from doing so. If I hold off on recruiting her, I can use this to my advantage to clear out some of the enemies blocking the bridge, and then she proceeds to get herself killed. Nice. Things get to the point where I literally have my entire army trapping a single Pegasus Knight. If only there was some kind of glitch. No, I am a gamer. I refuse to cheat either the game or myself. I can do this. Throughout this chapter, my main goal has been the same. Use Oswin and Raven to help Marcus slip past enemy lines and take out the boss, while basically everyone else survives. Dart one-shots a Pegasus Knight at the start, Hector and Lloyd block the forts, and Matthew keeps the top of the map under control. But other than that, every turn presents a new wild and wacky situation to adapt to. Somehow, I finally managed to kill the boss and obtain 5,000 gold from him, all without cheating. Never call me a fake gamer again. I get the option to do a Gaian chapter, but this time I decline, deciding the rewards aren't worth the hassle, even if there's experience to be gained. After that disaster, we get a breath of fresh air. Lloyd and Lynn are forced into the party, 2 units I haven't bothered to train due to being locked to one range. But with choke points and walls all over, all we have to do is walk up slowly and down smash, and nobody will be in any danger whatsoever. Of course, that means Nergal is gonna run off along with a thief holding the member card, but it's not like I added a rule saying we have to recruit everybody, because I have deep-seated mental issues that manifest in forcing me to punish myself in increasingly masochistic ways. Fuck. I'm gonna be honest, this was recorded a year ago and I'm not entirely sure what's going on here based on limited footage and notes I have. Like, here I am using the unlock staff with Sarah and then using the most complicated rescue chain in FE history, but in the rest of the footage she's up here using a sleep staff on Nergal. What I do know is that the Armor Knight and Mage here need to be one-routed immediately. Every turn counts, and if you get stuck at this point, you're not gonna make it. The boys do most of the heavy lifting, figuratively and literally, as they transport Matthew and Sarah up past the door, which you cannot allow to get blocked off. Meanwhile, Lloyd, Dart and the scrub units do the best they can to prevent reinforcements and others from flanking the boys. Eventually, Nergal is put to sleep with a 42% chance, and then his escape route is blocked so Hector can recruit him after he wakes up. Have fun on the bench, Matthew. The other thieves head down to open the chests, unaware that we're just gonna steal everything they have. With the member card, we can visit our first secret shop to buy a physics staff, so our healers can keep the boys healed without putting themselves in danger. The rest of the chapter is smooth sailing as we simply walk up to the boss and add him to the long list of people we've murdered in self-defense. So this map is pathetically easy. Monks are a total joke, poison weapons are a total joke, and the boss is an entire comedy routine. To the boys at least. Hector stays in the back, Marcus handles the top, Oswin the middle, and Raven gets airdrops to the bottom. We also get to use a dancer for the first time, but the chapter is over before she does much of anything. We get a lot of new units this chapter. We get Heath, Wrath, and my waifu Isadora. Here's the plan. We're getting into some gang shit. Left gang, right gang, and center gang. Center gang's job is to protect Nils. Raven and Oswin block the entrance while the healers stand right beside them. If any 2 ranged attacks come their way, they can heal each other, and Lloyd can even help out with rescue dropping to get them right back into the action. Good job, Lloyd. Here's a medal. Also, Priscilla gets a promotion. Over in the right gang's neck of the woods, the Cavs get Lynn into position to recruit Wrath, and after luring a decent amount of enemies over, they block off the room they're in with a light rune. Get trolled. Left gang has the hardest job. We've got to recruit Heath, but he's an enemy and we don't exactly have control of who we want to kill. We need to very quickly get into position in front of the door, and Marcus needs to one-round everything that gets in between Hector and Heath. Unless it's a worse than useless green unit. Once Heath has been recruited, he does what he does best, protect Wammon. Unfortunately, we cannot loot the treasure room, but it does make for a good safe spot. For the remainder of the chapter, everyone stays in their territory, just killing everything that enters their turf. Marcus briefly enters the center to get healed, ruining the center's gang's formation, but thankfully Lloyd doesn't suck enough to lose to a single knight. Here's another medal, and with that, this chapter is over. A desert with limited movement, fog of war, and hidden treasure? Alright Matthew, you're off the bench. The combination isn't actually as bad as it sounds. 2 good flyers, 2 thieves, and a physics staff with a unit to use it. We've got the tools to deal with this. And on the opposite side of the map is Pence, the one good green unit who will gladly commit genocide against red units in our stead. The biggest threats on this map are the two Brigand Bros and the Wyvern Riders. If the Riders aren't one-routed as soon as they come out from the fog, the Squishies are gonna suffer the consequences. Thankfully, our new unit Hawkeye is plenty strong, and Marcus is still performing with the best of them. Using an Axe Reaver, he reaves the first bro's axe. Meanwhile, Raven is getting chased through the desert by the other brother while trying to keep him within 2 range at all times to avoid getting attacked with his steel axe. Matthew steals his white gem and then yeets out of there as Raven continues to take all the abuse alone. Don't be like Matthew. This longbow keeps attacking him at 3 range too, with nothing he can do to retaliate. Eventually, the second Brigand Bro goes down, and most of the enemies have been cleared out. All that's left to do is form up, surround them all, and not let a single one escape. Thankfully, that annoying longbow archer is taken out by surrounding him from all sides and forcing him to attack Marcus at 2 range. All the hidden treasure has been collected, and we're ready for the next chapter, one which I've been dreading from the start. No, it's not Genesis. No way am I going through that on this type of run. What I'm scared of is Lloyd. Lloyd is one of those bosses that I wasn't entirely sure how I beat without player phase. His stats are all around better than all but my axe units, and he is a sword user. There are plenty of good weapons, including axes that can make short work of him, but he has 1 to range. So my only reliable options to deal with him are javelins and short spears, which Oswin can use while taking little damage. Except he targets resistance at 2 range, while doubling. The light brand he wields only does half damage at 2 range, but still, using Oswin is only a reliable strategy for wasting my physics saves. That leaves Marcus as the best man for the job. Big surprise. Taking all that into consideration, there still wouldn't be too much to worry about if not for the fact that Dr. Eggman over here is practically begging for death, and there's plenty of forts in the area for Lloyd to heal himself back up on if I don't finish him off in a timely fashion. Marcus can handle him, sure, but I can't kill him before I recruit Wallace, and I can't let him survive long enough for the rest of the map to whittle me down. My first instinct is to send my strongest units up to challenge Lloyd, while Oswin handles the right side, but that doesn't end well. So then I tried turtling at spawn to deal with the wyverns, but this bishop purges Florina for the sin of not having enough HP. I have Florina here because Wallace can only be recruited by a unit from Kaelin, and I figured a flyer has the mobility to recruit him no matter where he ends up. But while she effectively has 23 HP, Kent has 25. Better than Saint's 24 and good enough for me if it can help with the first turn. While I'm back in battle preps, I decide that Marcus is going to want an angelic robe. To start out, I have the boys defend Merlinus, and yes, Hawkeye is one of the boys now. I get Marcus all buffed up with a barrier staff and Phil's might before sending him out on his mission. I make sure everyone else gets out of range of the wyverns and let the first enemy phase play out. Marcus destroys everything and Merlinus baits the Purge Bishop. The first turn is a success. Sarah heals Merlinus to keep my bait alive, and Priscilla barriers Ninian in case she gets purged. The boys lead the charge to the right, while everyone else turtles at the bottom. Except Hector, I have a special mission for him. Hector places our first mine, and then walks right into it because I immediately forgot it was there. I may have gotten a bit too excited there. So, back where we left off, the rest of the wyverns are killed on enemy phase, and Ninian survives the purge as planned. With the enemy flyers dealt with, my flyers have free reign to move up, obtaining the Earth Seal. Or not. So, back where we left off, the flyers are 1 space back, the boys are wreaking havoc, and Hawkeye is protecting the support units, but Wallace is in serious trouble, and there's no way I can get to him in time. What the heck am I gonna do now?
Step 1. Place a mine on the ground. Step 2. Wait for an enemy to step on the mine. Step 3. Reset your game. Now you have complete dominion over the will of your enemies.
Compel them to surrender their only means of defense. Force them to suicide into your own units. Violate their free will in every way you can to gain an upper hand.
Well, you could use the Torch Staff on Fog of War maps to get the same effect, saving more mines for future use, but then where would the challenge be? Plus, it's likely impossible to get it from the Thief in Chapter 19, so I would have needed to buy one from the Secret Shop in Chapter 22, which I forgot to do. It's probably fine. So with the enemy units under my control, all I have to do is trade their weapons around until they don't have anything they can use. This is a much better solution for the Bishop's Purge Tome than waiting for it to run out of uses. I don't want to get rid of every weapon though, since I want to provoke them into attacking me so I can justify killing them for experience. At the very least, the tables have changed in my favor. So, Hector makes a run for it and escapes with Ninian's help, and Sarah promotes while everyone else just continues trying to save Wallace. Marcus nearly kills Lloyd to death right before I actually make it to him. Thankfully, I already calculated every mathematical probability in my head before the map started, so I wasn't too worried about ending map early. I just gotta heal Marcus up again, but now there's bad news. Kent cannot reach Wallace. The map has to go on regardless of Lloyd. I take the opportunity to visit the village for a silent staff and prepare to airdrop Wallace to safety on the next turn. Lloyd doesn't attack or heal, strangely enough, so I do just that, and now I'm finally ready to finish the map whenever Lloyd is ready to attack. The problem is, by now the backline is getting swarmed, and Marcus cannot get any more support. It has to end fast. Merlinus continues to be good bait, and the healers revive their 2-healer method to prolong existence, but it cannot work forever. The boys back up their boy. Lloyd and his gang rough up Hector, but he survives and retreats to Hawkeye to get rescue dropped. Then Lloyd and his gang rough up Hawkeye, but he survives and switches his weapon to kill him on the next phase. With no other choice, Lloyd suicides into Marcus, and another chapter is complete. And with that, I think I'm gonna have to leave things off here. This video is gonna be split into 2 parts, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss when it comes out. So far, this challenge has gone about how I imagined it, though I am surprised at how far I've gotten without any major obstacles. The early game was like figuring out a puzzle, but some of the more recent chapters have had 1 or more elements where you really need to take advantage of every tool at your disposal if you want to keep the challenge going. Lloyd, for example. I can only imagine it will get more difficult from here. Thanks to all of my amazing supporters on Patreon for making videos like this possible. That includes all of these A-tier Patreons on your screen right now, and all of these super amazing S-tier Patreons. Aqua Clash, Riley, Rhesus Puffs, Jagan, Faisal, Gammy, Signal Rondo, Severentier, 2Clutch, Abaddon 1810, Glyph, Arkholt, Baku, Bendion, Blue Caterade, Boots 42, Command List, Crimson Blader, Danielle, D, Giant Corkscrew, Ice Lake, Moo, Nikhil, Pete Vladias, Schmeep, Scott Mitchell, Skylar, and Zelda. Because this video has been in the works for so long, I thought it would be fair to not only thank current patrons, but also those who supported me in the past. Every time I look at the list of people helping me out like this, I'm amazed at just how long it is. All of you, as well as all of my other patrons, are the reasons I can hire the help I need to make scripted content like this video. Thanks to generous people like you, I can pay people like Hoshi for producing pretty much everything about this video, other than the voiceover. Speaking of the voiceover, special thanks to M for helping out with that part. Anyway, that's all I got for today. If you don't want to miss the conclusion of this playthrough, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.